feel like you're speaking a language that's just full of weird rules and even weirder exceptions? Well, you're not wrong. Today, we're going to peel back the layers on the words we use every single day, our verbs, and uncover a pretty wild secret history that's been hiding in plain sight this whole time. So, let's dive in. We're going to kick off our investigation with a sentence you've probably said or heard a million times. He has been running. Seems totally simple, right? But believe it or not, this little sentence is like a linguistic time capsule. It holds all the clues to a massive transformation that completely rewrote the rules of the English language. So, let me ask you this. How many verbs are in that sentence? Now, the obvious answer is one, right? Running. But, the real answer is a little more complicated than that. There's this whole grammatical machine working behind the scenes. And to really get it, we're going to have to pop the hood. Right, so that machine, it's what linguists call the verb phrase. Think of the main verb, the action, like running, as the car itself. But a car's not going anywhere without an engine, right? Well, in English, that engine is made up of some very special helper verbs. The official term for these helper verbs is auxiliary verbs. They don't really describe the main action themselves. Instead, they give that main verb context. They tell us when something happened, or if it's still going on, or if it's finished. They're kind of the power behind the throne. So let's take another look at our sentence and break it down. You can see running is our main action, but the first helper, has, tells us the action is connected to the present. That's called the perfect aspect. And the second helper, been, tells us the action is ongoing. That's the progressive aspect. Put them all together and you get a super specific meaning, an action that kicked off in the past but is still happening right now. Okay, so this whole system of relying on helper verbs, it's a huge feature of modern English. And it has a really fascinating side effect. It means our main verbs can be incredibly simple. You could almost say they all wear the same basic uniform. And I mean, just think about it for a second. A totally standard verb like play only has 4 different forms. 4, that's it. You've got play, plays, played, and playing. When you stack that up against a lot of other languages out there, it's amazingly simple. And this is where we get right to the heart of our mystery. On one hand, you have these super simple, predictable, regular verbs. They just add ed. Easy. But then you've got this other group, the irregulars, and they seem to follow no rules whatsoever. Sing, sang, sung. Drive, drove, driven. What on earth is going on here? Where did this chaos come from? To answer that question, we have to go back, way back. Because the English we're all speaking today, it's really just a shadow of a much more complex and, in some ways, a much more elegant language. Welcome to Old English. This is the language of the Anglo-Saxons, spoken over 1,000 years ago. Now, it's the ancestor of our language, for sure, but it played by a totally different set of rules. It didn't lean on a bunch of helper verbs. No, instead, it crammed all of its grammatical information right into the endings of the words themselves. See, back in Old English, verbs were split into 2 big families. You had your strong verbs, and they formed the past tense by changing the vowel sound right in the middle of the word, a cool trick linguists call ablaut. And then on the other side, you had the weak verbs, and they did something that might sound a little familiar. They just tacked down an ending, usually one with a D or a T sound. And get this obsession with word endings wasn't just for verbs. I mean, look at this. Just to talk about dogs, you needed all these different forms. The word for dog, hund, changed its ending depending on its job in the sentence. You see, this was a language where the endings did all the work, not the word order. Okay, so why does any of this ancient grammar even matter today? Well, here's the aha moment. Because those 2 families of Old English verbs, the strong ones and the weak ones, they never really left. They're still with us, hiding in plain sight. They're like fossils embedded in our modern language. And right here, this is the solution to the puzzle. Our so-called irregular verbs, they're not random at all. They are the direct descendants of those Old English strong verbs. That vowel change in sing, sang, sung, that's not a mistake. It's a 1,000-year-old rule that's still working today. So if our irregular verbs are just old strong verbs, what about our regular ed ones? Well, you probably guessed it. They're the descendants of the Old English weak verbs, the ones that just added that D or T ending. Over hundreds of years, the weak verbs basically won the popularity contest, becoming the default pattern for almost every new verb that comes into the language. And this whole vowel swapping trick wasn't just for verbs either. We see the exact same fossils in some of our oldest nouns. Why is the plural of man not mans, but men? Why is foot feet? It's the same ancient system at play, a leftover from a time when English changed its words from the inside out. So what we've really uncovered here is this massive evolutionary shift in the very blueprint of the English language. It's a pretty cool story of how making one thing simpler led to a whole new kind of complexity somewhere else. This chart really sums up the whole story. You can see on the left, Old English relied heavily on all these different word endings, but modern English, over on the right, it basically threw most of those endings in the garbage and replaced them with a strict word order and that powerful engine room of helper verbs. So, if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's this. English made a trade. It swapped its huge, complicated wardrobe of word endings, its uniforms, for a much simpler four-piece outfit. But to make up for all that lost information, it had to build a bigger, more powerful engine room of auxiliary verbs like be, have, and will to do all the heavy lifting. And that leaves us with one last question to chew on. Language never stops changing, right? The weak, regular ED pattern has been the top dog for centuries, slowly swallowing up old, strong verbs. So will all our verbs one day become regular? Or are these amazing, irregular fossils here to stay as a permanent reminder of the secret history of English?